We welcome now Tim Murtagh. He is communications director for President Trump's re-election campaign. Tim, thanks for coming on. Is there any truth to this report coming from John Bolton's book?
Look, I think what folks need to know about John Bolton is that he is now a disgruntled former employee, and in order to get this book deal that he's touting, he had to agree to include classified information that he had access to when he was working in the administration. And so, look, this is something that has already been tried a couple of times. First, we had the great Russia collusion hoax, which dragged the country through that for 2 years before that blew up and turned out to be never true. And then there was the Ukraine nonsense, which led to the sham impeachment. So this is just another attempt at the same old thing, and this one will fail just like the first two did.
So you're saying he didn't ask President Xi for help to win the election? I just want to be clear.
I mean, it's absurd. It's an absurd allegation, and John Bolton is just trying to sell books, and that's all there is to it.
All right, the economy has been in full effect here, Tim. As you know, particularly in battleground states, the reopening of the economy has divided Republicans and Democrats. If we are not headed for a V-shaped recovery come the fall, are you concerned that that could cost President Trump re-election?
Well, I think we're already seeing evidence of the great American comeback already being underway, and a lot of economists are, in fact, predicting a V-shaped recovery. We saw the greatest single month of job creation in this nation's history in May, 2.5 million new jobs created. We also saw retail sales jump by almost 18%, which, again, is the largest one-month jump in retail sales in this nation's history. And so the economy that the president built in the first place, before it was interrupted by the coronavirus, is that's a place where the president can get us back to. You can contrast that with Joe Biden. He's got a record of overseeing the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. And he says that the first thing that he would do as president would be to raise taxes by repealing the Trump tax cuts. That's a tax increase on 90% of American taxpayers. That is an economy killer. Top that with the idea that he has embraced the Green New Deal, which puts piles of regulations on these businesses who are trying to recover, and also would crush the entire energy industry and kill 10 million jobs nationally. I think if the question is the economy, President Trump wins that argument hands down.
Well, Tim, take us into Michigan, because polls there, I know you look at the polls, and Michigan in particular, a key battleground state. It was instrumental in President Trump winning in 2016, have him trailing there to Biden. What economic message has to resonate specifically in Michigan, Tim, in order to turn those polls around?
Well, we don't put any stock in public polls, first of all. They've always been wrong about President Trump, as we learned in 2016. And we know that the president still runs strong against Joe Biden in all of the states that we track, and that includes Michigan. Again, Joe Biden has a very difficult problem in Michigan with union workers and with manufacturing folks and with the economy there. Joe Biden voted for NAFTA. That is something that he is not going to get away with and get away from. This is something that killed American jobs. It moved manufacturing jobs overseas. Joe Biden voted to include China in the World Trade Organization. That is something he championed. At the time, he said that China had the economic impact the same as the Netherlands, if that shows you the level of his naivete. Joe Biden has a very serious problem. He has been complicit in these bad trade deals and sending our American jobs overseas. President Trump has a record of establishing much better trade deals. He tore up NAFTA and got USMCA in its place. That is a much better deal. On economic arguments, no matter what the front, Joe Biden can't hold a candle to President Trump.
It's trade. Trade's going to be the key issue in those battleground states that Republicans are going to draw on. And I want to ask you about the George Floyd protests and how have they impacted the presidential campaign, and especially in terms of outreach to minority communities as well as to the suburbs.
Now, I think you saw yesterday how intent the president is on leading this country in signing the executive order about police reforms, talking about safe communities and safe policings. Look, this is something that the president managed to accomplish in just 4 years, while Joe Biden has had over 40 years in Washington. And if Joe Biden now talks like these are things that he wanted to do all along, then why didn't he do anything about it in his 40 years in Washington, including 8 years as vice president? There is no question that the video video and what we saw and what the president saw of what happened to George Floyd in Minneapolis was shocking and horrifying. And there's no question that people support the peaceful protests that grew out of that. They're protected by the First Amendment, after all. But the violence and the looting and the burning, that is not something that Americans can stand for. And President Trump stands for law enforcement, and he stands with police officers. We know that the vast majority of law enforcement officers are good, solid people protecting their communities, and President Trump stands with them.
Tim, I want to ask you a final question just about this sense of normalcy that I know you say you don't look at polls, but look, I mean, if you look at the polls, a lot of independent voters are wondering, when is this sense of normalcy in the country going to return? It's been a very volatile summer for a host of different reasons. So to the swing voter, to the 70,000 voters who've previously voted for Obama, then voted for now President Trump, what do you say to them who are looking at this, scratching their heads, and whether it's the economy and or the unrest in the country pertaining to George Floyd? What do you say to them who are undecided and they're going to decide this election?
Well, I would say that Americans know that the economy had reached unprecedented heights under President Trump's leadership before it was artificially interrupted by the global pandemic. And let's remember that it was a pandemic and is a pandemic that was affecting the entire world. And so when the economy was interrupted, and now as we begin to come out of that, this is the great American comeback that is underway. And people should remember whose policies it was under that built the economy up to that position in the first place. And we do. We have to get back to normalcy. We have to get back to the United States being open for business again. And I think the president's rally in Tulsa this weekend will be a great, big, visible symbol of that. It is time for America to get back to work, and Americans want to get back to work. And that's what the president is doing, leading the great American comeback.
All right, Tim, I know you're headed to Tulsa. You going to wear a mask at the rally? Got to ask you.
I mean, we will have them, and we'll see what it's like. I mean, we feel safe. Everyone's going to get temperature checks. Masks will be provided, and I think we feel pretty safe. And Oklahoma is one of the most open states in the country. They're not requiring mask wearing in public in Oklahoma any longer because they're far along in the reopening process. So I would tell anybody who's thinking about coming to the rally that if you come to the president's rally, you're going to be perfectly safe.